Hey folks, Will here. Today we're going to talk about how to field strip one of my favorite handguns, the Colt Woodsman Series 2. There are a lot of videos out there on the internet that demonstrate what a great handgun this is. And I've seen a couple of videos out there for how to disassemble the Series 1, but I haven't seen one for how to disassemble the Series 2. And so we're going to take a stab at it. First thing I want to talk about is how to distinguish the Series 1 and the Series 2 handguns from one another. The Series 1 handgun, the pistol grip, probably the most noticeable feature is that the pistol grip heel comes across at an angle like this. And as you can see on the Series 2, the heel of the pistol grip is parallel to the barrel. Another distinguishing characteristic is that the Series 2 has a magazine release that's here where your thumb would be. On the Series 1, the magazine release is down here on the heel of the handgun. And interestingly enough, Colt went back to that arrangement for the Series 3. Only the Series 2 has the magazine release where your thumb would be. And that's one of the reasons I like this handgun over the other two models. Third characteristic that separates the Series 2 from the Series 1 is that the Series 2 has a magazine safety. And that magazine safety is, you see right here, when you insert the magazine into the magazine well, as it comes to the top of the well, the magazine actually pushes that little safety lever backwards and allows you to fire the handgun. That will come into play during the disassembly procedure and why it's necessary to create a second video for the Series 2 specifically. There is one other major difference, but we'll get to that once we get started with the disassembly. So the first step in disassembling the handgun is to remove the pistol grip screw here. I'm doing this with a flathead screwdriver. I've got my finger on the screw head on the opposite side. On one side you have a screw, and on the other side you have a little nut that looks like a screw from the outside. So there you can see your screw. So you can set that up there. And I've still got my finger on the nut. And that nut likes to drop out. I'll set it there in a safe spot where I know where it's at. Okay. So the next step per Colt's field stripping instructions is to remove the mainspring housing retaining pin. That's this pin right here. Mainspring housing, as you can see here, is completely separate from the frame of the pistol. And so when we remove that retaining pin, that's going to allow that piece to come out. Not immediately, we're going to have a couple of steps in between here and there. Take and press it in. That pistol grip screw has very fine threads on it, and so once I start the pin through, I like to switch over to a punch and press it out with a punch. Ideally, this would be a brass punch. I'm using a steel one here. And I'm catching that retaining pin on the back side. And I'm just going to set that up there. Okay, so the next step is to compress the recoil spring and capture the recoil spring in the compressed position. There's a little button up here on the top that allows you to catch that recoil spring. So we're going to take and we're going to slide the slide to the rear, kind of hold it firmly with our left hand, and then we're going to take and push in. I'm going to press with my thumbnail pretty hard, and then I'm going to just allow the slide to come back to the left. And if I've captured it correctly, all the tension will go off and that slide will just kind of float freely there on the rail. Okay, you want to take and notice how far down that button is pressed, because we'll want to make sure that that recoil spring is captured after the next step here. So the next step is to drop the hammer and release the tension, some of the tension on the mainspring. So this is a Series 2, and we've got that magazine safety there, so we have to insert the magazine into the handgun like that. And this is where you'll want to take a spent casing or a dummy round, put it in the chamber. And when we drop that hammer, we don't want the firing pin striking the surface of your backside of your chamber here. Let the slide go forward. Okay, and then we're going to squeeze the trigger and allow the hammer to drop. Now, you might expect the slide to still be floating, but because the hammer is dropped inside the slide on the back side of the bolt, the hammer is actually now preventing you from sliding the slide backwards. It's not the recoil spring that has gotten loose, it's that the hammer has fallen on the back side of the bolt. We'll take a look at our recoil spring retaining button here and make sure that it's still pressed in. And then we'll rotate the handgun around, and the next step is to take that mainspring housing out. What we're going to do is we're going to take and we're going to press upwards and inwards on the back top here of the mainspring housing, and we're going to allow it to pop out back there. Just kind of press kind of firmly, and she pops right out. So lift our mainspring housing out, and we're going to rotate the handgun over, keeping track of the bolt and slide assembly with our left hand, and then allow this spring to just kind of drop out the back. And at this point, rotate the handgun back over, we can remove the slide, pop our dummy round off, and remove our slide off the back of the rails. And at this point, we are field strip disassembly complete. Clean your handgun up and get ready to reassemble it. Now, one of the things that I want to point out here is this recoil spring. And the recoil spring is right here. There is a guide rod or guide pin that goes down through the middle of it, and the spring extends up here into the bolt. Okay. Your catch button is right here, and then this is the catch here that engages on the end of that guide rod. Now, on occasion, I have taken the handgun apart and that spring has come off. So what I'm going to do is show you what that looks like and then how to reassemble it. You might take the handgun apart and it might look like that. Okay, that's not good. You're not going to be able to reassemble the handgun like that and have it function correctly. It might also look like this. Looks a little bit better, but still not going to be able to assemble it and have the handgun function correctly. What you need to do is compress that spring down into here and then re-engage that retention mechanism. I've heard folks say that you can take a flathead screwdriver and you can work down in here this way, compress that spring, and I have done that. However, just as you're getting down here to engage the catch mechanism, the spring has a tendency to get away from you and send that guide rod flying across the room. So I built a custom tool to assist me with that, and let's take and try to zoom in on this a little bit. It's basically like a flathead screwdriver with a little groove cut in the side of it to assist you in grabbing that recoil guide rod, recoil spring guide rod, and pushing it up in there. And so that guide rod has a little lip, which you can't see right now, but you can kind of catch that little edge of the groove right there on the end of that guide rod and assist you in putting it back up in there. So let's give it a shot here. You'll want to start from this position here. If you don't have it in this position here, you'll want to take the screwdriver and maneuver it over in there until the guide rod and the spring are in that groove that run down the edge of the slide here. Once you get it in this position, you reach in there and with our little groove, kind of engage the edge of the guide rod. Now, I'm going to support the spring as we go back into the bolt, and I'm going to kind of press with the edge of my tool. I'm pressing outwards and a little bit downwards. Okay. Use your left thumb to assist. Okay, and now we've got it all the way up in there. Now I can reach back, and with my left index finger here, I'm going to engage the button on the back side. And so I'm still pressing downwards and backwards with my tool. And what I'm looking to do is engage that mechanism on the inner portion of that guide pin. And I'm not quite there yet. I'm going to take and rotate it. I'm going to use my thumb here to press in on that a little bit harder. And I'm going to take my tool and try again. And that time it looks like I got it. Okay. We're going to set that right there for a second, and I'm going to pick up our frame assembly here. So sometimes, depending on which way you rotate the pistol, you can rotate it over and the hammer will drop, and another way it'll get captured here and you won't be able to drop it. So when we get to the reassembly portion, we're going to need that hammer to go up into the slide, and we'll talk about that. That's another thing that's kind of, it'll be a step that will be unique for the Series 2 over the Series 1. So we're going to take, with our hammer lowered, we're going to insert the slide on the back of the rails, and we're going to slide it forward. And then we're going to rotate the handgun over, and what we would like to see is that the hammer drops up into the slide. And rotate this over. There's a little plunger on the back side of the hammer. Lift that out of the way so you can see. And actually, this time it did. So that's good. But it's unfortunate for our demonstration purposes, because I wanted to show you what to do if it didn't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold it like that, and now it's not dropping, right? I'm going to insert it from here. In order to do that, I have to pick up on the hammer a little bit. But now I'm in there. And for sure you can see that now that the hammer is not dropped. So if the hammer has not dropped, you insert your magazine, and then you can pull the trigger and drop the hammer. So what I wanted to show you what it looks like when it's not dropped, in this position here, and then I'm going to pull the trigger in 3, 2, 1, and that's what it looks like when it has dropped. Okay, so now the hammer is up inside the slide on the back side of the bolt. Okay. Now there's a little plunger here that is attached to the bottom side of the hammer, and that plunger drives the hammer from the mainspring, which is in the mainspring housing here. For now, we're going to lift that plunger up and out of the way so we can install that little leaf spring that we took out earlier. So, some things to check just for reference. There's a pin here. Next to that pin, there is a slot that's going to capture this tip of the leaf spring. There is a groove here, and there's this little toggling mechanism right here. Okay, and right at the tip of where I've got my punch here, that's where the other end of that leaf spring is going to go. And it's just going to rest in there. When we install it, we're going to install it with this orientation, and we're just going to take, you probably can't see me doing it, but I'm just going to put the other end of it right on the edge of this little piece right here. I'm not going to slide it into the groove. You might think it goes there. That's not the case. It's just going to take and lay on that edge right there. And drop it in there. And then we're going to take our pinky finger and slide it back and forth until that little tip falls into the slot there. And it has. So we're good now. Alright, so now we're going to reach up here and we're going to grab the little plunger that's on the, attaches to the hammer. And we're going to rotate it back here into that position there. Okay. Now we're going to keep our orientation so that it doesn't move. And then we're going to install the mainspring housing. So what we're going to do is we're going to insert it into the groove here, and we're going to kind of ride up the back of that leaf spring, get it to where we can kind of rotate it in there. And that plunger is going to sit in it. Alright, so let's do that again. I want to show you something. So there's a little cup here that's on the top of the mainspring, and that little cup is going to capture that plunger that we had there. So when you're inserting this, you want to kind of ride up the leaf spring so that it picks up that plunger and puts that plunger into that cup. Alright, so now we're here. We're going to push upwards and inwards with or pull upwards and inwards with our left index finger, and we're going to pull backwards with our right index finger. And she just kind of snaps into place there. Alright, so at this point, the next thing we need to do is install this retaining pin in the mainspring housing. And that's relatively easy to get started, but this alignment, the hole prevents it from, this alignment of the holes prevents you from pushing it in all the way a lot of times. And so what you have to do is kind of figure out how to maneuver the mainspring housing to get those holes lined up. And that housing is under pressure from the mainspring, so it's going to be a little bit difficult to maneuver. I find that for mine, I need to push upwards and inwards on the end of the mainspring housing, and when I do that, then I can just guide that bolt right in, or guide that alignment pin right in. Retaining pin. Okay. So she's in there now, right? So that really just leaves us the next step is to do a function check. I'm going to put a dummy round in my magazine. This time I'm not worried about retaining the recoil spring. So I'm going to slide my magazine up in there, lock it on the catch. I'm going to pull the slide to the rear. When I pull the slide to the rear, the recoil spring is released, Don't have to do anything, it just releases on its own. And then I'm going to slingshot my slide forward and drop the hammer. And she's working. So the last thing I need to do is to install the pistol grips. One on one side. Just kind of drops in there. It's got a groove right here. Just fits right in that little oval there. Drop the nut in. Hold it with my finger. Install the screw. Turn it in with the screwdriver. Don't want to tighten it down too tight and crack the grips. Just snug it up pretty good. And there we go. 1948 Colt Woodsman Series 2. These instructions should work for all of the Series 2 handguns. I hope you've enjoyed, maybe learned something. If there's anything that you need me to better explain, please let me know and we'll take another shot at it. Thanks for watching.